Hello, my name is Ashley Lambert, and this is Very Sleepy, a podcast to help you fall asleep. So, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and settle in. And get ready for tonight's story, Robin Hood's Visit to Longdendale. From the Book of Lore and Short Stories, written by Thomas Middleton. The book, Legends of Longdendale. Middleton was born in London and baptized in April of 1580. He was the son of a bricklayer who had raised himself to the status of a gentleman and actually owned property adjoining the Curtain Theatre in Shoreditch. He attended the Queen's College, Oxford, and matriculated in 1598, but did not graduate. He wrote and published 3 long poems in popular Elizabethan styles, but not really especially successful in the beginning, and in fact, got into a little bit of trouble with the Anglican Church, who banned verse satire, and his book of satires was burned. But, like they say, there's no such thing as bad press, and his literary career was launched. His work has long been praised by literary critics, among them T.S. Eliot, who thought he was second only to Shakespeare. But maybe he's more recognizable for his play, The Changeling, which has been adapted for film numerous times. Now, I know Robin Hood has been there, done that, so many iterations, as a legendary heroic outlaw, originally depicted in English folklore and subsequently featured in literature and film. This is a different take, because it ties into the lore of Longdendale, which is an actual real place. Traditionally, Robin Hood is depicted dressed in what is called Lincoln green, and as we know, he's said to have robbed from the rich and given to the poor, with Maid Marian and the Merry Men, his nemesis, the Sheriff of Nottingham. Robin Hood became a popular folk figure in the late Middle Ages. The earliest known ballads featuring Robin Hood are from the 15th century. The history of Robin Hood has been debated for centuries, but numerous references to historical figures with similar names that have been proposed as evidence of his existence, some even dating back to the late 13th century. But did Robin Hood ever visit Longdendale? And where exactly is Longdendale? Well, it's a valley in the Peak District of England. The name means long, wooded valley, which sounds like a place that Robin Hood might hang out. But another strange lore that comes from Longdendale is that the valley and the surrounding area has a reputation for strange phenomena, including unexplained lights, allegedly supernatural apparitions, and has become a center of attention for ufologists and ghost hunters. But if you talk to the scientists, they suggest that the lights may be what they call earth lights, produced by pressure on the underlying rocks. Lore is found everywhere near Longdendale. In fact, the lore would suggest that Robin Hood himself passed through, and tonight's story is about that visit. According to the author, the Robin Hood relics referred to in the legend that we're going through tonight are objects of great local interest and curiosity. The Robin Hood's picking rods are situated on Ludworth Moor and consist of portions of 2 upright stone pillars rising from a massive stone base. Sounds very outlanderish. They are thought to be many of the relics of the Druid period and are referred to in the Legend of Coombs Rocks, the first legend of the present series. It is said that they received their present name because Robin Hood and his outlaws used them as target for their arrows, and the dents in the pillars are said to have been caused by the arrow points. The Robin Hood Stone is a huge rock which lies in the bed of the River Tame near the Denton Cemetery, almost opposite the Arden Paper Mill. As stated in the legend, there are fragments of Little John's stone near it, and old traditions state that both stones were thrown to their present positions from the top of a Warneth Low by the two foresters, whose names they bear. Certain indentations in the larger stones are said to be the imprints of the fingers of Robin Hood, whose grip was so strong that he left the impression in the solid stone. So get ready for tonight's story, Robin Hood's visit to Longdendale, and I hope it makes you very, very sleepy. Robin Hood, the greatest bowman that old England ever knew, frequently visited Longdendale, probably the thick woods of Longden, with their wealth of wild red deer, induced him to lead his band from the haunts of merry Sherwood to the no less merry land of Longdendale. Old traditions tell of a mighty forest in Longdendale whose trees were so thick that the squirrels could leap from branch to branch, from mottram to wooded. Such a country might well attract a lover of the free forest life like bold Robin Hood. Moreover, there ran a road over a good portion of Longdendale, along which the fat old abbots were wont to convey their treasures to their fine abbey seat in Wales. Doubtless the abbot dreaded a meeting with the mighty outlaw, for Robin dearly loved to pluck a fat-bellied churchman, that he might place the golden nobles in the pouches of the poor. This story, however, has nothing to do with the robbing of the abbots or monks. It is a story of skill and fabulous strength. Indeed, there are many who doubt that the incidents related ever occurred, simply because such things seem impossible. But then, those incidents are recorded in the traditions of the people of Longdendale, and consequently, they are worthy of serious consideration. He must be either an amazingly bold or an exceedingly ignorant man who had cast doubt on the veracity of a Longdendale tradition. However, the reader and the listener must judge for themselves. The story has it that bold Robin Hood and his forest band, including the redoubtable Little John, Friar Tuck, Will Scarlet, and 100 other sturdy yeomen, all clad in Lincoln green, and having great long bows of English yew, and good cloth-yard shafts, appeared one day in the Longdendale country. Weary of hunting the stag through the woodland glades, they were longing for some chance of adventure to present itself, when they became aware of a loud and dismal moaning hard by. The sound came from a handsome youth who, cast full length upon the sward, was bitterly bemoaning his cruel fate. It appeared that he was betrothed to a beautiful maiden, but her guardian, a grim old bachelor, had forbidden their union, and finally, to prevent them being together, had shut her up in his castle. On hearing the story, the foresters were loud in their denunciations of such heartless conduct. They vowed it was the greatest sin that man could possibly commit to interfere with lovers' meeting. Little John was for attacking the castle, battering down the gates and sending an arrow through the midrib of the guardian, which process, he thought, was calculated to end the matter at once. But Robin, though anxious enough for a fight, was of opinion that his henchman's plan might endanger the maiden, who was completely at the mercy of the tyrant. He instead suggested an interview, and accordingly the stout Friar Tuck was sent as ambassador, or emissary, to make terms with the maiden's guardian. At first, the friar was met with an angry outburst on the part of the guardian, a bold, bad baron, who loudly declaimed that he would permit no outside interference with his affairs. "Out on thee, thou fat-bellied churchman!" shouted the baron. "What hast thou to do with lovers, particularly maidens? Methinks thy vows should bid thee leave maids and love severely alone." Now this sort of talk did not at all suit Friar Tuck, who, churchman though he may be, and now shaven and shorn to boot, yet loved to kiss a pretty maid on the sly as well as the best layman who ever walked. But he loved not to be twitted with about in this fashion. "Fat-bellied churchman, indeed," quoth he, "and what about thine own fat pouch? As for love and pretty maids, I warrant thou wouldst have a long way to travel, for thou comest across a maiden who would fall in love with thee. Such a foul reptile I have never set eyes on. As for beauty, well, as far as thou art concerned, the least said on that head, the better." The baron stared at this rejoinder, as well he might. Such language had never been hurled at him before, and for a moment he could scarcely speak, so great was his surprise. When he recovered speech, he ordered his attendants who were in the room to seize the friar and cast him into the dungeon. But Tuck lifted the quarter-staff which he carried and brought it down so heavily upon their crowns that the men dropped like pulled oxen. At this, the baron began to swear and rave, vowing all manner of punishments for the friar, all of which, however, only made Tuck fall down laughing. "Come," said he, "thou art short of wind enough, friend baron, and if thou goest on like that, thou art like to choke thyself. Moreover, if thou only so much as raises a finger to summon thy vassals to thy side with intent to lay me by the heels, I shall then clout thee on the sconce as I have served thy caitiffs, so thou hadst best listen to reason." Now, sorely discomfited as he was, a bright idea suddenly struck the baron, and turning blandly to the friar, he readily consented to set free the maiden, and to permit her marriage with her handsome lover, providing the foresters, of whose shooting prowess had heard so much, could shoot their arrows from the buttes to the upright druid stones, now known by the name of Robin Hood's picking rods. By setting them this apparently impossible task, he thought to rid himself of interference from the band, and he chuckled merrily to himself when Tuck, who knew nothing of the distance to be covered by the archers, coolly accepted the terms. The time for the shooting display having arrived, the baron led a company to the scene, that he and all his friends might witness the discomfiture of the renowned archers of Sherwood. As for the handsome youth on whose behalf Robin had interfered, he was quite dismayed, and even the assurance of the outlaw could not comfort him, for he thought the feat impossible. The archers stood at the buttes, and away in the distance rose the stone target of the picking rods. Robin Hood took the first shot, and he laughed inwardly as he drew the string tight and true, for he knew the secret of the longbow, as indeed do the chroniclers who tell this story. The arrow left the bow with a shrill whistle of the goose-wing tip, and greatly to the surprise of the baron, it fell plump on the target with such force as to cut a notch in the hard stone, a notch so deep that it may be seen to this day. Little John, Will Scarlet, and the rest of the forest band all tried their skill, and but few failed to hit the mark, though none were quite so near the center as their leader, Robin Hood. When the shooting was finished, the Baron was in a great rage, and he sought for some means of evading the fulfillment of his promise. Turning to Robin Hood, he made an offer that if the outlaw, with his own hands, cast down the great stone which stood upon Worneth Low, then the Baron would not only bestow the maiden upon her lover, but would give her a good dowry into the bargain. On the other hand, if Robin failed to accomplish the task, the whole matter must rest where it was, and the maiden remain a captive. Greatly to the surprise of all, Robin agreed to the proposal. "I will humor thee this once," said he to the Baron, "but if thou attemptest to get beyond thy word when the feat is done, my good foresters shall fall upon thee and knock sparks out of thy baronial hide." "If thou dost the feat," quoth the Baron, "rest assured I shall keep my promise." For the task he had set bold Robin was, as the Baron well knew, 1,000 times more difficult than that of the shooting at the picking rods. Robin Hood conversed a while with Friar Tuck, and then the whole company moved off to the summit of Worneth Low. The stone, or rock, as it should more properly be called, was a huge mass, almost the height of a man. It had occupied its position on the summit of Worneth since the world was created. A round half-dozen of the Baron's retainers failed to lift it. But Robin Hood, casting aside his jerkin and baring his brawny arm, raised the great stone slowly aloft, and then, with one mighty throw, cast it out westward toward the sunset, and, amid a wild shout of triumph, it disappeared in the distance. They afterwards found the stone in the bed of the river Tame, near the woods of Arden, and under the name of Robin Hood's Stone. It remains in that same spot to this day. Now there are some who profess to believe that no mortal power could cast that stone so great a distance, and they explain the event by supposing that Robin was in league with the good fairies, who gave him strength to lift the stone and then, invisible to men, flew away with it and dropped it in the Tame. And perhaps these people may be right. Be that as it may, there is no record to show that the bold, bad Baron disbelieved in Robin's powers, and we may take it for granted that the lovely maiden was duly released, that she married the lad of her choice, and that they lived happily ever afterwards, as they certainly deserved to do. It is asserted by some that there was a much smaller stone near the great Robin Hood Stone on Worneth Low, and that Little John afterwards threw this stone in the direction of the one thrown by Robin. The second stone, being lighter, traveled a few yards further than the first, but the throw being not so skillful, the stone was broken in several pieces by the fall. It lies to this day near the Robin Hood Stone in the waters of the river Tame, and it still retains the name of that giant forester, Little John. The end. I hope you enjoyed the story of Robin Hood's visit to Longdendale. It's a different take on a story that we've heard numerous times, but what I really love about it is that it's based on folklore and the stories that the people in Longdendale tell, one of which was this one. Thank you so much for all the downloads, the reviews, and the support. I appreciate it. And I would love it if you subscribed at verysleepy.com. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. Thank you for joining, and I hope you'll join again. Keep an ear out for next week's story. I'm Ashley Lambert, and this is Fairy Sleepy. Until next time, good night.